All right. Good evening, everybody. Hair's sticking up. Sorry. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to today is June the 4th. I lost like a week there. June the 4th, Thursday, daily devotional. Appreciate everybody joining us this evening for our daily devotional. Yesterday for our Bible study that's bothering me. It won't sit down. It's all fluffy. Anyway, for our daily devotional, or for our Bible study last night, we studied about 1 Timothy chapter 1. And Joe made a comment about Acts chapter 9, verse 1. And I've kind of been thinking about that since, about the breathing threats. And actually, Joe Gann's comment was that he was breathing threats and breathing murder. And I've been thinking about that, and I've been wondering kind of what all Paul or Saul was doing, what exactly he was, especially given the context of chapter 9 verse, given the fact that he was going to go to the Sanhedrin and ask for letters to go to Damascus and arrest Christians to bring them back to Jerusalem, which means obviously for him to specifically ask for letters to go to Damascus, there must have been a presence of Christians in Damascus. It's not like he asked to just go to random cities and arrest Christians. He specifically asked to go to Damascus. So, he's searching out Christians. And the end result is that he is violent, in that he is violently zealous, I guess you could say. He's violently zealous for the Lord, but he's violently applying the Mosaical law. Okay, he's not taking liberties with the Mosaical law. He's not randomly just maliciously being violent to satiate some kind of bloodlust. And there's a reason why we're starting tonight with Acts chapter 9. I'm not springboarding to do some kind of study in 1 Timothy chapter 1 or anything like that. But this is something I was thinking about, because I wonder if Paul or Saul was while he was breathing threats and was basically spreading the word, hey, if I find you, I'm going to take you, catch you, I'm going to take you before the Sanhedrin. If he was basically letting any and all people know, if you are a Christian, I will find you, I will pursue you wherever you are, and I will bring you before the Sanhedrin, and we will put you to death per the law. If that's what that means by Acts 9 verse 1, breathing threats and murder. Again, not that Paul or Saul personally put anyone to death, or even that necessarily he personally beat them. Again, I'm not saying he didn't. I'm not saying that he didn't. But again, there's no text that specifically says he did. But I wonder if what chapter 9 verse 1 means is that he was, if the word was being spread that basically Saul, again, verse 2, he's going to Damascus, all the way to Damascus from Jerusalem. If the word's being spread, listen, I will pursue you wherever you are. You are against what God's word says. Again, in Paul's mind, that's what these Christians were. I will find you, I will take you, I will arrest you, I will bring you before the Sanhedrin, we will cast our vote against you, and we will put you to death per God's law. Okay, I wonder if that's what that means. Because again, there is nothing that suggests that Paul was certainly bloodlust or malicious in what he was doing. But whether or not you believe that Paul personally beat or murdered people, that's a stretch, or at least murdered. Now beat, again, it would depend on how you interpreted the Mosaical law with that, because how the Mosaical law applied there is a little iffy. but regardless, there's a reason why I brought this up, because I appreciated Joe bringing this out to me, because I had never really caught that whole. I'd always focused on that breathing threats part. I had never really caught or thought about that whole murder part. But the reason why I was thinking about this was there was an article, I should say, that was posted. Let's see, when was that posted? Come on, there we go. On May 26th. I don't know if some of you may have read it before or not. Let's see here. Let me pull this up. There we go. Okay. So the article reads, Wuhan police raid quote-unquote pastor's home, pull him away during Christian Zoom event. Now, again, this is not a political, I'm not making any kind of political statement or anything like that with this, with regard to the Chinese, or anything like that. But there is a point to be made here about, given the fact that the Chinese do not allow for any Christian teachings. Okay, they don't allow for Bible teachings, Christian teachings at all to be taught. And so that's something to consider as we discuss this. So let me change this aspect ratio for a second. See if I can make this just a little bit different. Ooh. Is that too much? It's too much. Oh, come on. Okay, no, that'll work. Can't quite make it bigger on my end without it. Yeah. Okay. So if that's too small for you guys to read, I'm sorry. All right. So anyway, it says a Christian pastor in Wuhan, China, where the coronavirus outbreak originated, was pulled away by police Saturday during an evangelical event on Zoom, according to a Christian persecution watchdog. The preacher, identified only as Lao or Luo from Nanjing Road Church in the Hubei province, was taken away by the police because he posted the gospel online, the Chinese Christian Righteous Fellowship shared in a Facebook post. International Christian Concern, ICC, said the Proclaim Jesus Gospel gathering on Zoom was an all-day event with a morning and afternoon session, and the police showed up around noon to, quote, look for evangelism materials or publications before taking, I'm going to call him Luo away. The Reverend Jonathan Liu, founder of the Chinese Christian Fellowship for Righteousness, told Fox News the Chinese Communist Party views Luo as a threat because the government requires everyone to be loyal to the CCP and Xi Jinping. I guess you can't be loyal to them and Jesus, I guess. Since Xi Jinping came to power, the Chinese government's persecution of Christianity has been the norm. It has been very serious oppression of influential churches. They have woven various crimes, persecute churches and pastors. Earlier this month, video footage emerged of officials raiding and violently dragging out members mid-service at, I'm not going to try, at a church in the southeastern Fujian province. Earlier this year, Open Doors USA CEO David Curry warned that China under President Xi Jinping was building a blueprint for persecution as Christians have been under constant surveillance, not just on the streets, but also in their churches, which have been torn down and holy books confiscated. So I kind of thought this was interesting because, especially given I had actually saved this article a little while back, and kind of came back to it after yesterday's study, because just because of our what we talked about from our study kind of made me think about Saul, or made me think about the article, and it makes me, the whole point of the daily devotional today is just kind of think about how we would react if something like that were to happen in our country, and what we would do. If there was a Saul, of course, now it's not quite the same. It's not apples and orange, or it's not apples and apples here. Saul thought he was doing what was right. He thought he was serving God. And that's part of what the whole context of there at the end of 1 Timothy 1 is about. Paul thought he was serving the old law and serving God by serving the old law. Now, today's political situation, and again, I'm not speaking specifically about China or anything like that, but the point is that in today's situations that we have, especially when it comes to whether it's people or political parties or governments that don't want or don't serve God or don't want other people to serve God, especially via Christianity, we have to be aware of ourselves and be aware of our brethren around the world. Now, this article, it mentions the church that this fellow was attending, or was the Nanjing Road Church. It doesn't say it's a Church of Christ. It doesn't say anything about it. It just says Nanjing Road Church. So I don't know if it was a Baptist church, or if it. It doesn't say. It doesn't say any kind of affiliation. So I don't know what that is. It would seem as though it had some kind of association with. I don't know. It doesn't seem like it had any association with anything. It doesn't seem like, anyway, according to the article. So I don't know. But my point is, I know for a fact, at least as of about 10 years ago, and I'm sure there still are now, there are churches of Christ in China. Okay, I got an email years ago, and I may still have it somewhere, that was emailed to me and a whole bunch of other preachers, that was emailed in code. And it gave me a completely new insight into the letter of Revelation, which really is a letter. Okay, and we really should kind of refer to it more as a letter instead of just as the book of Revelation, because it is a letter to the 7 churches of Asia from Jesus, and it is, to a certain extent, written in code. Okay, to a certain extent, the letter of the book of Revelation is a revelation from John. It is a revelation, but it is kind of the revelation of a vision, I guess you could say, but it's from Jesus to John to the 7 churches of Asia. And in a lot of ways, that email kind of opened my eyes to the way it was written in such a way that only Christians would understand what was being said. And it kind of gives you an appreciation, and sometimes the things we take for granted, and in a lot of ways, all the things that we've gone through the last several months has helped. I say helped. Obviously, I wish we hadn't gone through all this, but to a certain extent, I think I'm glad that we have the opportunity to appreciate the fact that the things that we take for granted, hopefully we don't take them for granted, but certainly in comparison to our brethren around the world, especially in places that are hostile to them, to just their existence as Christians, to what they stand for, to what they represent. Again, how places like in China, their very existence somehow is a threat. I don't get it. I don't understand it. The very nature of the Communist Party, I don't see how communism necessarily is uh, kind of a anti to Christianity. I mean, I don't see any kind of political issue there. I mean, I'm not saying that God approves of communism, but I'm saying I don't see how it's a kind of how they can't coexist. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know why that's the case, and I'm sure there's probably a whole bunch of background there, uh, but I feel for our brethren who exist in China and in many of these other places like North Korea and some of our brethren in Russia. Okay, even though Russia is no longer quite as bad as it used to be, some of our brethren in Russia are still dealing with a very hostile environment. It's still a difficult place, and a lot of times we can these types of things kind of can escape our attention, but and we kind of it comes to our attention things like some of these issues in the Philippines and some of these others where these brethren, because of the elements and because of kind of the poverty, okay, that those types of things that are not necessarily man-made issues and that touches our hearts. But some of these other issues are just as sad, perhaps even more so, because they are man-made issues, and there's nothing we can do about it except pray for them. But anyway, I'm rambling, and I apologize. It's just something that kind of came to my mind, especially after our study last night. I was thinking about Saul and how much he may have thought about all the things he did in his past. And I was reminded of this article that I had saved to bring up at some point. And so anyway, it just kind of occurred to me, especially since we're doing our live streams, and I got to thinking about, what would happen, if would I be willing, if I were living in a country where it was illegal to be a Christian, much less to be preaching the gospel, to get on Zoom and be involved in an evangelical event. That's, again, I don't know what type of church this fellow was associated with. Again, it doesn't say what type of affiliation it is, but that's courageous. So I admire that in China, this fellow was willing to get on Zoom and brave the wrath of his government, risk getting caught. All right, everybody. That's your daily devotional. Just something for us to think about. How far are we willing to go to stand for the cause of Christ if we were in a situation like that? But also to be aware and to pray for our fellow brethren, not only in poverty-stricken areas of our world, but also in areas like China, North Korea, Russia, some of these other places where it's illegal to be Christians. Pray for them because it must be extraordinarily difficult to live there and be Christians, and yet they do it. They live, and every day they worship, apparently every Lord's Day, as they can, and they do what they have to do. All right. Well, we will pick up tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. With our next daily devotional, and Lord willing, and then we will have our 10 a.m. worship service with our congregation, Wichita Falls congregation, on Sunday, and then our 1 p.m. live stream Sunday as well, all Central Standard Time, obviously. All right, thanks everybody. Y'all have a good night. Lord willing, I'll see you tomorrow.